Today, we are diving into one of the greatest comeback stories in all of history. We're going to follow a leader who inherited a war that was basically lost and then turned it into Rome's most defining victory. This is the story of Scipio Africanus and his legendary rival, Hannibal Barca. But let's start with a question, a really simple one. How do you defeat an enemy who seems completely unbeatable? I mean, an enemy who has just crushed your armies time and time again and is now threatening your very existence. For Rome, back in the 3rd century BC, this wasn't just some thought experiment. This was a terrifying everyday reality. And this is the face of that reality. Hannibal Barca. He was so much more than just a general. He was like a force of nature. For more than a decade, he just rampaged through Italy, outsmarting and frankly annihilating every single Roman army that dared to stand in his way. He was Rome's boogeyman, their ultimate adversary. Now, to really understand the rise of the man who would finally challenge him, we first have to get a feel for just how desperate things had gotten for the Roman Republic. And I mean desperate. This was, without a doubt, Rome's darkest hour. The absolute lowest point was the Battle of Cannae. And look, this wasn't just a defeat, it was a cataclysm. We're talking tens of thousands of Roman soldiers slaughtered in a single afternoon. One of their ruling consuls, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, was killed right there on the field. The Republic was teetering on the very brink of total collapse. But amidst all that chaos and despair, a young military tribune named Publius Cornelius Scipio steps up. He actually survived the carnage at Cannae and rallied what was left of the Roman forces. Now, the legend goes that he found a group of highborn nobles who were planning to flee Italy, and he literally, at sword point, forced them to swear an oath that they would never abandon Rome. Whether it's true or not, it tells you everything you need to know about the iron will of this young man. That act of defiance, that was just the beginning. A few years later, after his own father and uncle were killed fighting in Spain, Rome desperately needed a new commander for that crucial war front, and they made a choice that was, well, completely unprecedented. They chose him, Scipio. He was young, he was ambitious, and now he was tasked with avenging his family while somehow saving the Republic from losing its most valuable province. I mean, can you imagine the pressure? It would be a daunting task for any seasoned general, let alone someone his age. And this really highlights the immense gamble Rome was taking. Think about it. He's only 25 years old. He had never held the major political offices, like praetor or consul, that were pretty much required for this level of command. Yet he was granted imperium pro consul, which is basically a special decree giving him the supreme military authority of a consul. This was not normal. It was irregular, it was risky, and it would completely change the course of the war. So what does this young, unconventional commander do with all this unprecedented power? Well, he doesn't play it safe, not at all. He immediately goes on the offensive with this brilliant, audacious plan to conquer all of Spain. Okay, so here we're looking at Hispania, which is basically modern-day Spain. For Carthage, this place was everything. It was their source of silver, supplies, and fresh soldiers. Scipio knew that to beat Hannibal back in Italy, he had to first choke off his resources, right here at the source. And his strategy? It was a masterclass in audacity. First, a lightning-fast surprise attack on the enemy's capital and main port, New Carthage. Then, he would engage and defeat the Carthaginian armies one by one, and it would all culminate in a final, decisive battle that would drive them from the peninsula for good. During that attack on New Carthage, Scipio showed his really unique brand of leadership. He exploited a low tide to cross a lagoon, which was brilliant, but then he told his men he'd had a vision of the sea god Neptune literally helping them. This stroke of psychological genius convinced his army they were absolutely destined to win, and it cemented this growing legend of Scipio's divine connection. So, after securing Spain in just a series of stunning victories, Scipio returned to Rome not just as a hero, but as a strategist with an even bolder idea. He argued that the only way to finally win the war was to take it directly to Carthage's doorstep. He wanted to invade Africa. Now, you can imagine the old guard in the Senate, guys like Fabius Maximus, they thought this was reckless, totally insane. But Scipio, who was now wildly popular, played his hand perfectly. He basically told the Senate, look, either you give me the command or I'll just let the people of Rome decide. They had no choice. They had to agree. So he got his command, and this map here shows the final high-stakes phase of the war.
But you know what? The political opposition, they weren't done trying to stop him, not by a long shot. The Senate tried to cripple his invasion by refusing to grant him any new legions. But their plan completely failed. Scipio's reputation was so immense by this point that he raised an entire army of volunteers, just from his supporters and clients all across Italy. The man was unstoppable. And Scipio's invasion was a massive success. He won key battles, he forged new alliances in Africa, and he forced a panicked Carthaginian government to do the one thing they never thought they'd have to do: recall Hannibal from Italy to defend the homeland. And so, the stage was set for the ultimate showdown. For 15 long years, these two men had defined this war without ever actually meeting on the battlefield. On one side, you have the Carthaginian legend, who had never lost a major battle. And on the other, the Roman prodigy who had studied his every move. History's greatest military rivalry was finally about to be settled.
The place was Zama, the year 202 BC. In one of history's most pivotal battles, Scipio unleashed his new tactical doctrine. He had this brilliant idea to organize his infantry into columns with wide lanes between them. Why? It created channels for Hannibal's charging war elephants to just pass harmlessly right through his lines. That, combined with superior cavalry, was enough to finally defeat the unbeatable enemy. The war was over. Rome had won.
Years later, the two men allegedly met again, and the story is just fantastic. Scipio apparently asked Hannibal to rank the greatest generals of all time. Hannibal named Alexander the Great first, Pyrrhus second, and himself third. When Scipio, kind of smiling, asked where he would have placed himself if he had won at Zama, Hannibal gave this incredible reply. It was the ultimate compliment, right? He was admitting that by defeating him, Scipio had earned a place beyond comparison.
Scipio returned to Rome and was given the name Africanus in honor of his victory. He was the savior of the Republic, the most powerful and popular man in the city. But greatness on that scale, it often breeds jealousy and fear.
And his victory wasn't just symbolic. He brought a staggering 123,000 pounds of silver back to Rome. That's not a typo. That amount of money refilled the state's empty coffers and secured its future as a Mediterranean superpower. He had delivered on every single promise. But his very success made him a huge political target. His rivals, led by this stern traditionalist named Cato the Elder, they saw Scipio's immense popularity and influence as a threat to the Republic itself. So they attacked him with these trumped-up charges of corruption, subjecting Rome's greatest hero to a humiliating show trial.
Utterly disgusted by the ingratitude of the city he had saved, Scipio just left Rome. He retired to his country villa and never came back. This is his family's magnificent tomb in Rome, but he commanded that he not be buried there. It was a final, bitter statement against the republic he felt had betrayed him.
He was the man who defeated an unbeatable enemy, who saved his country from total annihilation, and who laid the foundations for an empire. And yet he died in self-imposed exile, completely alienated from the very city he had fought so hard to protect. It leaves us with a final, really powerful question to think about. What is the true price of greatness?